y'all.
Hey, great to see you again.
This is Shadow-Caste. I'm Jan.
And Paul. We're here talking about something.
Talking about sex.
Oh, let's talk about sex.
But from a research standpoint.
I'm hardly qualified then.
You've done plenty of research, from what I hear.
Yeah, hands on.
Thousands of subjects.
Hundreds at least. Well, it sounds like a lot until you realize, well, just once every 2 weeks and then, at it for 40 years. A lot of fucking people.
Okay, so we're gonna ignore that part. Okay, get us centered here. Centered and balanced. So,
yeah.
I decided quite a while ago that if I wanted to master anything in life, what would I want to master? And I'm like, what's more important than love? And also because I work with people about clearing their subconscious of, negative beliefs and fears and things like that. I was researching for other people, but I was also researching for myself. And it's really cool that there's a lot of data these days on love and falling in love and what your brain looks like when you're in love. Like, for instance, I just came across this thing a few weeks ago that people say, okay, you never have that like in love thing ever again after the first few weeks of marriage, few years of marriage.
How's that?
But they can measure it. Some people do stay in love.
But wait a minute.
40 years, 50 years.
I thought we were talking about sex.
We are going to talk about sex.
Oh, I see.
But anyway, this is how I got into this stuff.
Ah.
So anyway, I came across this pair of researchers. I think they've been married 50 years or something like that. They've been doing research, I think, for, I was going to say 40 years, but they would have had to start when they're 10. So maybe they've been married longer
But even
than that.
30 years. Maybe.
Anyway, they've worked with 50,000 couples in workshops, and they've worked in this particular thing I'm going to talk about for this book that they wrote. They worked with 2,500 couples.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Oh, here's my mic over here. Oh, that makes a difference, doesn't it?
I didn't even have my headset on. Jesus.
Oh, hopefully you heard all that.
3 bottles of
Sorry.
wine.
Yeah, we're drinking. Oh, toast.
It's
Too spontaneous conversation. So anyway, research couple, they're called John and Julie Gottman. So they got together. Julie was a clinical psychologist and worked with a lot of people, especially with trauma, like PTSD and domestic abuse and all that sort of thing. John was the researcher guy, and he was studying. It was so funny. He was working with this other guy, and they were both in like shit relationships. They couldn't, get ahead with women and stuff, but they were researching love and relationships and all this kind of stuff, but researching other people. So these two got together. They formed something called the Love Labs. It started out in Seattle, and I think they have like 5 of them across the U.S. right now. They'd bring couples in, and they would study them. There'd be like cameras. There'd be like body monitors. They'd be monitoring their heart rate and their respiration and all kinds of stuff.
I'm sorry, but while they're fucking or?
No. So they're learning about how couples interact. And basically, they found that there were couples that were masters of relationship, and there were couples that were disasters of relationship, and there are certain behaviors of each. And so they wrote this book called 8 Dates. Now I'm connecting it with sex. This might not be as much sex talk as you want on this one. Sorry to lure you into this.
I feel cheated.
I kind of did cheat you a little bit, but not on purpose. So they wrote this book, and so this book is for a lot of things. It's for people who are starting to date and getting to know each other. It's for relationships that are, kind of stalled and stuck. Like, for instance, they found that like a lot of like high-end couples only were like talking 35 minutes a week.
a lot of high-end couples.
Like, you know, they got high-end jobs and got busy lives and they got kids and all this kind of stuff. And the one-on-one, like, real conversation was only like 35 minutes a week. So it's for those kind of people, and it's also for people who are in a disaster in their relationship. Maybe they're getting ready to break up, but it's also for people that are dating and they're getting to know each other. And so the way, and one of the things that they said in the book was, it'd be really great if you have these conversations before you have sex. So I actually did that.
Interesting.
So,
I remember.
Yes.
The,
So like,
the
you know,
man we can't name. We
right.
don't want to give his name.
Yeah.
But he's got a superhero.
He's got a superhero name. He wasn't a superhero, but it was a dating site relationship. It was a spiritual dating site because that's one of my things. If I was going to get into a long-term relationship, I would have to have that component. But basically, this book is called 8 Dates. So basically, you go on these 8 dates and you talk about these 8 like important.
I see. Conversations before sex.
Conversations before sex. So.
And the thinking is that if you're moving towards a relationship, if I get you right, let me just try to put it in to make sure I have it framed.
Okay.
Is that if you're thinking about getting into an emotional relationship with somebody, that when the sex starts, you kind of...
It changes everything.
Yeah, you can kind of get all that confused.
You're on drugs. By the time you have sex, you're on drugs. You're on oxytocin,
So you
you're
sort
on
of gloss
dopamine, serotonin.
So you gloss over stuff that matters. So it's not really like...
You're looking through rose-colored glasses.
Wow, totally. I've been there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think I get you.
So this is like if you wanted to have a long-term relationship, possibly marriage or whatever, and you were serious about this person, it's better to find out if you have these major disconnects or these major incompatibilities before you have sex. It's better to find that out before you have sex.
Is it?
Right. I was going to say, a man wouldn't say that because he wants to have the fun, and then we break up. But for a woman, I don't want to fall in love with this guy because if I have sex, I have this chance I'm going to fall in love. I mean, a woman, if you have like intercourse, it releases all this oxytocin, all this bonding hormone, and a woman falls in love. And maybe with the wrong guy. It's happened to me before, and it's heartbreaking.
Oh, it's so interesting. I think there's, like, for me, if I was in that situation, right, where I'm looking to be in a relationship, emotionally connected to somebody, as I've been, many times. I'm in a happy relationship right now. Doesn't mean that we don't.
For decades.
For decades.
Yeah.
And we have an active, very healthy sex life. In the past, I want to know pretty quickly whether the sex is good, because if the sex isn't good, then
right.
There's no way I'm going to think about them as a long-term viable.
Okay, so hold on. I got my glasses on. I want to read this, and then I'm going to take them off. So the 8 topics are: date 1 is trust and commitment. Date 2 is addressing conflict, like how do you fight. Date 3 is sex and intimacy. That date for me and him went on like for many dates. Date 4, work and money. Date 5, family. Date 6, fun and adventure. Date 7, growth and spirituality. And date 8, dreams. I feel like they left one out too, and I think one of them should be like the everyday of life, and another one should be the end of life. So anyway, those are the topics. Now, if you look at like the philosophy of somebody like Jordan Peterson, he would agree with you, and I agree with both of you as well, that you can agree on all those other things, but if the physical attraction isn't there, and if the like major personality, Peterson calls it conscientiousness. Like for instance, this guy was pretty ADHD and OCD. And that ended up kind of being something that I didn't feel like I could deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no, I was, we've been friends for a long time, so I was
friends.
A part of this whole scenario.
He heard the...
While it was going on, and I thought, wow, this is very clever, because, you sort of go into a thing with your eyes wide open, but But the question that it left me with is, geez, maybe you can go into a thing with your eyes too wide open, and that, like, I don't know as if you can really be if I was pondering, I don't know if it's real, but I was pondering that if I had gone through all of those steps with my wife while we were just kids,
You would have given up?
I don't think we would have been. I think if I was sort of physically going, no, we have a completely different philosophy about family. Got it. Economically, we don't have the same goals. Like, I think I would have said she doesn't fit, because I would have sort of excluded her based on this sort of intellectual criteria. But for me, the thing that led us to be together now for more than 20 years is that we have a genuine care for each other. And so I think for me, the one that really stands out on that list is how well you communicate to each other your needs and how well you can listen to each other's needs. And so the other ones for me, like, they don't rank as big in importance, because I know that when we disagree on something, we have a process of how we communicate that's
right. So
respectful.
that's another thing that Jordan Peterson says is how well you negotiate is really, really important. So okay, so look, most people don't discuss these things before they get, like, seriously involved with people. And there are dating shows that show this. Like, there's that Love is Blind show.
Yeah. Oh, that's
So they fall in love, they've sight unseen, there's a wall between them, and they have all these great conversations, and we're so compatible, we like the same things and all that. But they don't discuss the really important questions, like, do you want to have kids?
But it's very superficial.
But I mean, they have all
about it.
this time that they could discuss this kind of stuff. Like, how do you fight? When you get mad, do you give me the silent treatment, or do you want to discuss it, or do you need some space, or whatever, or how do you deal with money? Like, there was a guy who was a doctor. This girl was going to marry this doctor guy, but he spent every cent he got. So if you're, like, way off on that, you need to know that, and you can negotiate that. You can say, okay, so part of what they're going to talk about in some of these things is, like, when you have the money conversation. Like, for me personally, I grew up poor, and then I also had the experience where I had a husband who this is bad, made a bunch of money growing pot, and went off, like, spending $1,000 a weekend with his friends on cocaine, leaving me at home with the kids with no car and hardly any food. Then that makes me want to have my own money.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So you need to look at your traumas surrounding money. You need to look at your preferences surrounding money. I've not been a good saver. I like to travel. I like to whatever. Maybe my future partner, likes to save most money and not go out to nice restaurants. And then now that we know that, and we know what money means to us, we can have a negotiation before it comes up. We don't actually have to have that argument. We don't have to bump up against it first.
Yeah, you can pre-plan a solution.
Yeah.
Which sounds incredibly intelligent. And I think it's one of the reasons I was so interested in this is because, like, for me, I think that there's two conversations I like to have before sex, right? One is
condoms or not.
When's the last time you were tested, right? And like, it's just a sex thing, right? And so you're just trying to find out factual data about
and there's a back
risk
option.
preferences. And then, there's, like, on the other side of that, when you're in a serious relationship, or you're looking to be in a serious relationship, then it seems incredibly intelligent to really make sure that you're on the same page with somebody, because, like, the very worst thing that I think happens and I certainly have been on the other side of this where I've been in relationships with women where they love the sex and then they just sort of go, oh, like everything else doesn't fucking matter. But 9 months from now, it's going to matter. Or that's a poor choice of months. But,
Poor choice. Yeah.
but you get it, yeah. 2 years from now, it's going to matter. And
Right.
they're going to say, oh my God, like, you know what? I didn't realize that.
You never take out the garbage, and you leave the toilet seat up, and you spend too much money.
All three things, true?
Yeah.
You know me pretty good.
So the sex date is really important because most people can't talk about sex. And even though you're talking about these seemingly dry topics, if you're able to talk about the sex and what you want before it ever happens, it's actually, for me, easier to talk about it before. It's like you don't want to stop during the act and say, and you know, he might say, tell me what you want. And he wants you to just like spit out like a phrase and think that he's, you know, going to please you. Like it's a more complicated topic than that, especially for a woman. So to be able to talk about what you want and how you want it beforehand is really, really kind of erotic, and I think it makes for a better sex life.
But like
and,
what?
And this guy was a Swede. I thought he was going to be like really like inhibited and stuff, and I was shocked at some of the stuff he said that he was interested in, and I'm fine with that. So it was
we're
great.
not using the name, so let's get into it.
Sorry, I just spit all over you.
Sorry.
Well, the costumes and the thigh-high white boot. There was a lot of white involved. Thigh-high white boots and, you know, hair a certain way, and yeah.
Thigh-high white boots on him? On you?
No.
You?
Me.
Oh, I see. Like an ABBA thing.
Yeah, that's Swedish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize. I mean, he opened me up that Swedes have this very outgoing sex life, uninhibited sex life, and I guess, you know, if you're stuck in the winters for so long, that you kind of get creative.
But I think that's a great insight, really, which is like, I think I've seen that a lot, you know, in my own life, is that there's a lot of people who are really sexually repressed, or but worse, don't realize they're sexually repressed, right? And so then it's almost like, I don't know, there's some sort of like Santa Claus thing going on, right? Where it's like, they believe in this
thigh-high white boots?
Yeah, like they just believe in this make-believe thing. And then, like, they have all this mental construction and their fantasies. And they got all this crazy shit going on. And it's all in their head, right? And then, like...
I'm not following you. I don't think the audience is either.
All right. Well,
Santa Claus?
Let's come back.
What?
You know, like you have this sort of... You've been told this thing and then...
Fantasy.
You believe it as true, right? So it's like,
Myth.
well, all right. You know what I'll say better than Santa Claus is Prince Charming, and
Okay.
The one true love, right? The greatest fucking destroyer of relationships ever, in my view. Like I have a friend of mine that lives here, used to work with us, and she had several people who perfectly good relationships, perfectly good partners, but she was never satisfied because in her head she had this idea that like fucking Prince Charming was gonna come along, and then everything was gonna, like, they just rode off into the fucking sunset, and they never fought,
and the sex was gonna be great right out of the box.
It's almost like she in this case, and I've met a dozen women like this, right? Like it's prevalent. This, like, they're not even thinking about the sex, right? Like they're thinking about the romance and the romance and
we love romance.
The storybook, and then like one thing happens, right? Like the guy is like, and this is a real example. The guy didn't take her, like, it was a special day for her, and he should have known that, and then he didn't do anything, and so she thought that, and that fucked her up. Like, just because then she's like, but then he's not.
That's why guys don't want to start dating right before, like a month before Valentine's Day, because then there's this big pressure.
How could I? He's not the one. If he was the one, he would know. He'd be able to read my mind.
Yeah.
And then, like, it's just a downward spiral down the fucking toilet drain from there, right? And like, it's just you just put that shit in your own head. You know what I mean? Like, Disney put that in your head.
True.
And then you swallowed it because you love the romance.
And that's part of, okay, so pretty soon we need to watch one of these clips because you need to see who these people are.
All right, yeah, let's do it.
But part of it is nobody's perfect. And if you expect that, if that girl expects that guy to be perfect, then she's in fantasy land because she ain't perfect either. But if you have if you have somebody that you can have a good friendship with and have a nice attraction with, and you've figured out how to negotiate disagreements together, you're going to change in your life. You know that other person's going to change in his life. You know you have faults. You know he has faults. You can negotiate all that if you have the skills and if you have the the love and the will and the friendship.
But also, like, that you've got yourself under control and
Yes.
And reset your stupid ideas and like you like, I'm sorry to say, but I'm just trying to help you, really. Just like, if you're a woman out there with this Walt Disney complex, like...
Well, and it's a problem on the dating sites these days because a woman thinks, oh, I'm the queen, and I want the guy who's like, he's got the 6-pack abs, and he's 6'4", and he's this and he's that, and he's got the nice white teeth, and he's got, good eyebrows, but not better than mine. I saw that on one of these shows.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, fuck.
And I've seen many times where they do these quizzes with women, and then they
women are bad these days. They really
calculate the percentage of the human population that meets
that
absurd fucking criteria.
0.005.
Yeah, and it's like less than 1/100% of the world makes the kind of money, looks the way you think.
Right. The money. I forgot about
the money.
So,
like, why are you, like, the thing that I think, if I could just sort of rant for a second, is...
Be my guest.
Because, like, I have a lot of women friends, and I've had a lot of intimacy with women and like close.
It's quite experienced.
When I was younger, better, and so what I think is, you're sort of setting yourself up for failure, right? Because you've got such unrealistic expectations here, and I think that the reality behind it is that your ego is so fragile that you consistently have to sort of re-emphasize how great you are to the point that you start believing it. And I think that the worst thing that you can do for yourself is to start thinking you're so much better than everybody else. And the more you think that you're better than everybody else, the more unhappy you're going to be.
Positive self-esteem is a good thing, and an overinflated ego is not.
Right. And I think there's a big difference between having a acceptance of yourself as you,
right,
and saying, you know what, I'm 10 pounds overweight, and I hope I get my lazy ass up to get rid of it, but maybe I'm not going to. And
I still love myself, but I maybe don't have to say everybody I date has 6-pack abs.
I mean, like, look, if you're going to hire gigolos, I think 6-pack abs are a perfectly reasonable thing.
Check off every box on your list.
But, like, because you're going to fuck somebody, you're going to pay for it. So, by all means, get who you want. But if you're going to try to be in a relationship with somebody and you want to build a life with someone, then, like...
And hello, there's a lot more important things than just physical...
Then what are you doing with... like, the thing that amazes me on a lot of these talk shows is they say, who's your ideal partner? right? And like when I talk to emotionally aware people, they say things like has a really great sense of humor and listens to me really well.
Loyal.
Right. Like
Good integrity.
Cares, is able to express their emotions
Kind.
in a positive way,
Compassionate.
right? Pretty important shit.
Yeah.
And when you listen to the majority of women that go on these stupid dating shows, which maybe isn't a fair subset, but it seems to be, based on all the research that's been done on how women respond on Tinder, is that when they say, "What are you looking for in a man?" the list is, he's got to be 6'2", and he's got to make $150,000 a year,
Yep.
and he should have blue eyes,
Right.
and he should have a six-pack,
Right.
and it's just like one superficial thing after another. You've just compiled the most superficial list, right? Like if I was going to look for if somebody says to me, "Hey Paul, what do you want in a prostitute?" I'd say, okay, like I got a fucking specific physical list that I'm gonna be willing to pay for, right?
And the biggest irony is women accuse men of being superficial.
But every time there's a list of what women want, it's the largest absurd list of superficial traits.
Yeah.
Yet then somehow you turn that all around and you start saying, I don't know why I can't find a guy. I've been looking for a relationship for 10 years and I just find one loser after another. Well, no shit.
Or people reject me because I'm overweight.
Yeah, like look at your fucking list. Like if you're overweight, then like maybe it's a good idea for you to think I'm perfectly okay with accepting somebody else's overweight.
Right.
And like
overweight
according to who?
Yeah, let's don't have double standards. I mean,
right. And even overweight according to who?
They're really amazing research. I guess I think they've written 50 books. I mean, they're really amazing, and they've been together a long time.
Wow.
And they still really love each other. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So let's
do it.
There's just 2 clips. Let's watch.
With couples for a really, really long time. We've seen over 50,000 couples in workshops. We've seen couples individually as well. And what we were trying to do is 2 things. One, we were trying to create a book that would help the couples who've been together, maybe for decades, for a long time, who were both so busy, dual career couples, that they didn't stay in tune with each other over the years. They'd lost touch with each other. They would have to-do lists they would discuss, like what was found at the Sloan Center at UCLA, where dual career couples would spend 35 minutes a week talking to each other. That was it. So we wanted to create a book for couples like that who had grown really, really distant.
And then let's do this next one. So it just
things, for example, like the chapter on money, which asked, okay, so how did your family growing up deal with money? What value did they place on making money? How much money was enough, right? Did they like to spend more money or save more money? Did you grow up with this sense of real, paucity of money? Or did things always seem so wonderfully, perfectly comfortable? How did you grow up? And how do you value money now? What does money mean to you? So money can mean so many things, right? It can mean freedom, power, security, insecurity. What does money mean to you? So we were asking questions like that. We started with 11 dates, something like that we had seen were really important conversations.
It's an interesting one, money, because I think we were just sort of talking about how significant money is to I think it's much more important to women when you're thinking about dating than it is to men. I very rarely talk to a man who is considering getting married to somebody who really considers their profession or how much money they make before they either get into the relationship or
woman.
don't.
The man's been the provider, so that's kind of like
But that's still,
hardwired in.
And in a
But
way,
for
it's
me,
real.
the money thing is huge just because how you look at money. So, for instance, in
Yeah.
this particular situation, money to me means freedom. Freedom to travel and freedom to buy what I want, buy the musical equipment I want, that kind of thing. Freedom to, give my kids some money, blah, blah, blah. But for him, money was the security thing. So he was like much more tight with the money. And, and we were talking about merging our finances. So, I mean, in a marriage, if you want to kind of go all in and we're in this together till the end and, we're sharing everything,
Sure.
then you really need to be on the same page. Like, for instance, I was saying, I made more money than him. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with like putting it all in there, but I also want us each to have a separate account where we have money that we can spend that we don't have to ask permission of the other person to spend the money. But at the same time, I brought up the thing that if you have the same amount of like disposable income as I do, it's not quite fair because you also expect me to look nice and I got to spend money on clothes and makeup and that, that eyeliner cost me $20. So, but we were able to work it all out. He's like, okay, we have a special allotment for the lady things.
Cool. I mean, because
But if you talk about it in advance, you don't have the fight when it comes up and he sees that you spent how much money on clothing and makeup? But he enjoys, he gets the beneficiary of that as well.
I had one relationship with an Italian, and she when we started to get connected to each other, we were friends for quite a while, and then it sort of
morphed.
Yeah, and as it started to happen, she was like, "I want to put a contract in place."
Contract?
Yeah, and so she wrote a contract, 3.5 pages long, that sort of defined for her how we would be together and the conditions of our agreement.
And
3.5 page contract. And we negotiated it, and went back and forth. Like I said, okay, well, like I get that these are your terms, and like here are my terms, and like we put it all very contextually together, and it was
got it notarized?
no, but we signed it, and had a copy each.
I like that it was defined, though. It's an unusual situation to be a third party in a.
Yeah, totally.
You know.
But what was fascinating about it, which was long before I knew of these guys or what you're talking about here in terms of the 8 conversations, is that it really brought out, like, we didn't get into, I think, the details that I think are very valuable that you're talking about here, but we did get into, like, sort of like, okay, well, like, what happens if I have another guy that I like, or
Yeah, I think it's great.
says, or what happens in this scenario? What's our parameter?
It's the DTR agreement.
Yeah, what's that?
Determine the relationship. That's what the young people say when they have the DTR talk.
No, determine the relationship. Yeah, I think that's a great conversation, and that I found very beneficial. And like I know that something else that I've really think is wonderful that I've sort of adopted is this ability that is happening with the younger generation that I just borrowed, which is if we're out drinking and we're out having a good time and sparks fly and you think, hey, why not? Then fucking text it to me.
Oh,
And-
with somebody else.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so just out, you have a good time and things are going.
Give me a heads up.
And but no, you are going to expressly write fucking consent in a message that you send from
Request
your
for
phone
permission.
to mine,
Wow.
so that I don't have to worry that in the morning you're not going to say, "Oh my God, my virtuosity has been compromised, and I was a victim of I made decisions while I was drunk." I think one of the most important conversations that anybody that's listening or managed to get this far and has
Thanks if you hung in this long.
and that is sexually active, I don't give a fuck what you think it might do to the romance. You better have a fucking text message on your phone that says,
Yes.
I am going back to your place to fuck you, and I'm doing it of my own free will. And it can
Okay.
it can be fun. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be a contract. But that fucking email could save you 20 years in prison. One important conversation to have before sex is get a goddamn message on your message machine. So if you're out and you meet somebody and it's a hookup, you have a Tinder date, and it goes good, and you're thinking, let's go back someplace, and she says yes, let's go back someplace, and you've had a couple drinks, the last thing you need to say before you close that deal is, great, just message me that you are
you want to have sex with me. That's great. I've never heard anybody say that, and I think a lot of men get unjustly accused these days,
man.
And it's a dangerous world out there. So yeah.
And you might say something later in the night, but just like might be great right then, but then after the sex, she has some fucking emotional trauma, and like the bats come out of the cave, and all of a sudden the scene is different. So better to lose the occasional romantic connection than to find yourself in one situation where now
It disrails your whole life.
yeah, man,
Derail,
like,
I guess.
just a text message.
So we're all about solutions. I think that was one of them.
So yeah, but there's one superficial way to have a conversation before sex, and and on the other side,
And if you're interested in a long-term romantic relationship, and you want to make sure it's the right one for you, and especially if you're a woman who has a danger of falling in love with a guy and